The Zorn Galactic Hegemony had conquered precisely 2,743 civilizations before they encountered humanity. Their record was impeccable, their military reputation unassailable, and their confidence so bloated it could have filled several star systems. Admiral Krelax reviewed the initial reconnaissance reports on Earth with the same casual disinterest he'd applied to every preliminary invasion assessment in his 300 standard cycle career. Holographic displays flickered with data points: planet classification, population density, technological markers, typical primitive species. Technological level pre-interstellar, muttered his secondary navigation officer, Vreen. Rudimentary energy production. No unified planetary government. Tribal conflicts. Primitive weapons. Krelax's mandibles clicked in agreement. Humanity would be another footnote. Another quick subjugation to add to the hegemony's expansive conquest log. What the Zorn didn't understand was that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology. It was pure, unadulterated spite. Take Mara Rodriguez, for instance. She represented humanity far better than any diplomatic envoy or military strategist. A 35-year-old spacecraft mechanic from New Mexico with a perpetual scowl, 3 expired caffeine ration cards, and an extensive collection of wrenches that she treated with more respect than most people treated their life partners. On the day the Zorn first entered Earth's solar system, Mara was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning fusion reactor, muttering a string of creative profanities that would have made seasoned military drill sergeants blush. She didn't know about the impending alien invasion. She was too busy fighting her own war against mechanical entropy. The Zorn's initial scanning probes depicted humans as disorganized, fractious beings. They saw wars, political divisions, economic inequalities. What they didn't see was the fundamental human trait of turning any obstacle into an opportunity for creative problem-solving or destruction, depending on mood. Their first major miscalculation was assuming that technological sophistication correlated directly with military potential. The Zorn measured civilizations by their quantum computing capabilities, antimatter production, and subspace navigation. Humanity's metrics didn't even register on their standard evaluation charts. What the Zorn didn't realize was that humans could weaponize anything. Give a human a paperclip, some duct tape, and 15 minutes, and they'd construct something that could either save a life or accidentally trigger a small nuclear event. Sometimes both. Admiral Krelax's preliminary report read like a bureaucratic death certificate for humanity: species marginally intelligent. Technological capacity negligible. Recommendation: standard planetary subjugation protocol. Estimated completion time 72 standard cycles. If the Zorn had one fatal flaw, it was underestimation. And humanity was about to give them a masterclass in why that was a terrible strategy. Little did they know that their first contact wouldn't be with Earth's governments or military. It would be with one supremely irritated mechanic who considered her wrench an extension of her own nervous system and viewed mechanical problems the way most people viewed personal vendettas. Mara Rodriguez was going to have a very bad day. And the Zorn were going to have an even worse one. Mara Rodriguez's life could best be described as a continuous battle against machinery that seemed determined to break at the most inconvenient moments. Her workspace at Interplanetary Logistics and Repair ILR was less an office and more a sanctuary of organized chaos. Tool boards covered in wrenches of various sizes hung like religious iconography, each one carefully color-coded and positioned with the precision of a military arsenal. Her current project was a temperamental cargo shuttle that had more issues than a government bureaucracy. The ship's quantum stabilizers were throwing tantrums more dramatic than a toddler denied ice cream. Most mechanics would have surrendered. Mara Rodriguez saw it as a personal challenge. "You think you're going to beat me," she muttered, tapping a wrench against the malfunctioning circuit board. "Not today, you quantum prima donna." Her supervisor, Jack Martinez, knew better than to interrupt her when she was in full diagnostic mode. He'd learned that lesson 3 years ago when he'd made the mistake of asking about her lunch break during a critical repair. The resulting lecture on thermal dynamics and intermittent power coupling had been so technical and passionate that he'd simply nodded and backed away slowly. What most people didn't understand about Mara was that she didn't just fix machines. She communicated with them. Each piece of equipment had a personality, a quirk, a specific language of maintenance. To her, a wrench wasn't just a tool, it was a translator, a negotiator, sometimes a weapon of last resort. Her personal history was as unconventional as her repair techniques. Raised by her grandfather, a retired Air Force engineer in the dusty outskirts of New Mexico, she'd learned early that the world was full of things waiting to be fixed, and that most problems could be solved with the right combination of stubbornness, technical knowledge, and strategic percussive maintenance. Percussive maintenance, she often explained to bewildered junior mechanics, is the art of solving complex technical problems by precisely hitting the right spot with the right amount of force. It's science. Sort of. Her current employer, ILR, specialized in interplanetary cargo and personnel transport. They handled everything from small courier ships to massive mining vessels. Mara had a reputation for taking on the most challenging repair jobs, the ships that other mechanics looked at and immediately recommended replacement. Little did she know that her particular set of skills was about to become monumentally important. The first hint came on a Tuesday, which was already a bad sign. Tuesdays in Mara's experience were always harbingers of complicated nonsense. Jack burst into her workspace, his usual laid-back demeanor replaced by something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Rodriguez," he said, "we've got a situation." Mara didn't even look up from the circuit board she was rewiring. "Define situation, and this better not be another fuel line leak. I'm in the middle of something." "Alien first contact," Jack replied. "Military wants our best technical problem solver." She finally looked up, one eyebrow raised. "And they chose me because you once rebuilt a quantum drive using parts from a coffee machine and 3 paper clips," Jack said. "And because you're the only person I know who can look at a completely destroyed system and see it as an interesting puzzle rather than a catastrophic failure." Mara set down her wrench. "Well," she said, "this Tuesday just got interesting." The military briefing room looked like it had been designed by someone who believed beige was the height of aesthetic achievement. Mara Rodriguez sat in the back corner, her well-worn work boots propped up on the chair in front of her, surrounded by a collection of technical manuals and what appeared to be 3 different types of multi-tools. Colonel Richard Hammond, a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite, and then slightly disappointed by life, was not impressed with her casual attitude. "Ms. Rodriguez," he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who was used to being taken very seriously, "this is not a typical repair job." Mara took a long sip from her thermos, a device that was more heavily modified than most spacecraft communication systems. "Sir," she replied, "I fixed quantum drives in the middle of sandstorms and rebuilt life support systems with nothing but a soldering iron and pure spite." "I'm listening." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a series of alien spacecraft designs that looked like someone had taken the concept of geometric nightmare and run with it. Hammond's pointer moved across the screen, highlighting various technical specifications. "The Zorn Hegemony has targeted Earth as their next conquest," he explained. "Our initial scans suggest their technology is approximately 200 years ahead of our current capabilities." Mara snorted. "Technology is just a series of problems waiting to be solved. Give me enough coffee and spare parts, and I'll turn their advanced systems into expensive paperweights." The room was filled with military personnel who alternated between looking impressed and slightly terrified. Mara Rodriguez was not your standard issue anything. She was a problem solver in the truest sense, someone who saw technological challenges as personal affronts that needed to be addressed with extreme prejudice. Colonel Hammond continued, outlining the mission parameters. Mara would be inserted into a specially modified stealth craft, designed to infiltrate the primary Zorn command vessel. Her objective was simple: find and exploit technical vulnerabilities in their systems. "Wait," Mara interrupted. "You want me to basically hack an alien spaceship? With what exactly?" From a locked case, Hammond produced what looked like a modified tablet, several specialized data drives, and a toolkit that seemed more suited to a surgeon than a mechanic. "This is the most advanced infiltration kit we've developed," he said proudly. Mara picked up the toolkit, turning it over in her hands. "Cool," she said. "I'm going to need to modify about 60% of this to make it actually work." The military personnel exchanged glances. This was not the response they were expecting. The next 72 hours were a blur of preparation. Mara took the infiltration kit apart completely, rebuilding it with modifications that made the original engineers look like children playing with building blocks. She added custom cooling systems, redesigned data interfaces, and created backup systems that could theoretically survive a nuclear blast or at least a really bad coffee spill. Her final preparation involved what she called her emergency repair kit, a custom-made belt with more specialized tools than most spacecraft carried in their entire maintenance bay. Laser cutters nestled next to precision screwdrivers. Quantum frequency modulators sat comfortably beside what appeared to be a very large, very specialized wrench. If this breaks, she muttered to herself, testing the wrench's balance, I'm going to be very cross. The night before deployment, Jack found her in the workshop, making final adjustments to her equipment. You know this is basically a suicide mission, right? He asked. Mara didn't look up from her work. Beats sitting around waiting for something to break. Besides, she added with a slight grin, someone's got to show these aliens what human engineering looks like. As she packed her gear, one thing was certain: the Zorn Hegemony was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology. It was one extremely irritated mechanic with an impressive collection of tools and zero patience for poorly designed systems. The stealth craft dropped Mara within 500 meters of the Zorn command vessel, a massive structure that looked like someone had taken a cathedral, wrapped it in metallic scales, and then decided to launch it into space. Its design suggested engineers who believed complexity was a substitute for actual functionality. Always with the unnecessarily complicated systems, Mara muttered, checking her modified infiltration kit. Bet these guys have never heard of simple and efficient. Her entry point was a secondary maintenance conduit, a choice that made military strategists nervous but seemed perfectly logical to someone who spent her life finding creative ways to fix things. The conduit was designed for automated repair drones, which meant it was just large enough for a human with a very specific set of skills and zero concern for personal comfort. As she navigated the tight space, her communication system, a device she'd personally rewired to be more reliable than most military-grade equipment, provided a constant stream of technical data. Quantum energy signatures, system resonance frequencies, power distribution networks, all of it was being mapped and analyzed in real time. The Zorn's internal systems were a nightmare of interconnected complexity. Most species would see this as an impenetrable fortress of technology. Mara saw it as the world's most complicated puzzle waiting to be solved. Okay, you quantum drama queen, she whispered to the ship's systems. Let's see what makes you tick. Her first major discovery came accidentally. A minor power regulation node, something the Zorn likely considered too insignificant to monitor closely, revealed a cascading vulnerability in their entire energy distribution network. It was like finding a loose thread in an expensive sweater, except this thread could potentially unravel an entire alien warship. The Zorn's primary weapon systems were impressive. Quantum-based energy projection, multi-dimensional targeting systems, adaptive shield frequencies that could recalibrate faster than most computers could process. Impressive, but fundamentally over-engineered. Always compensating, Mara muttered. Classic. Her plan wasn't about direct confrontation. It was about finding the system's inherent weaknesses, the technological equivalent of finding the one Jenga block that would make the entire structure collapse. She began by introducing microscopic modifications to the ship's power regulation systems. Nothing dramatic, just subtle shifts that would cause cascading inefficiencies. A 0.03% power distribution anomaly here. A minor frequency desynchronization there. To the Zorn's automated systems, these would appear as negligible fluctuations. But Mara knew better. In complex technological systems, tiny inconsistencies could grow exponentially. An alarm triggered soft, almost imperceptible. But to Mara's extensively trained ear, it was a symphony of potential system failure. Gotcha, she whispered. The ship's defensive algorithms began to react, attempting to compensate for the growing inconsistencies. But each compensation introduced more variables, more potential points of failure. It was like watching a highly sophisticated machine slowly tie itself into increasingly complicated knots. Admiral Krellax would later describe the next few moments as the most perplexing systems failure in hegemony history, but for Mara Rodriguez, it was just another Tuesday, a complicated machine that needed some very specific persuasion. And she was just getting started. The moment the Zorn realized something was wrong wasn't a sudden revelation. It was more like watching a massive, technologically advanced organism slowly wake up to the fact that something was fundamentally incorrect with its entire existence. Alarms began to chirp. Not the dramatic, earth-shattering klaxons of human sci-fi movies, but the kind of precise, almost polite notifications that suggested something was very wrong in the most bureaucratic way possible. Admiral Krellax's primary navigation officer, Vreen, was the first to notice. a quantum stabilization module, a component so critical it was typically more protected than the Admiral himself, began to show microscopic performance degradations. Servrine said, her voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty. We have a situation. Krelax didn't immediately look up from his strategic planning hologram. Define situation. That was his first mistake. By the time he fully engaged with the growing problem, Mara Rodriguez had already transformed the ship's internal systems into what could best be described as a technological Rube Goldberg machine of cascading failures. Her strategy wasn't about destruction. It was about deconstruction. Each system she touched became a domino, ready to trigger a chain reaction that would make the ship's designers weep. Power regulation systems began to fight each other. Shield frequencies started to desynchronize. Propulsion arrays developed minute but critical misalignments that would make precision navigation impossible. The Zorn's automated repair systems kicked in exactly as Mara had predicted. But each attempt to fix one problem created three more. It was like watching a perfectionist try to clean a room by moving things around, only to make everything exponentially messier. This is not standard procedure, Krelax muttered, watching system after system develop inexplicable complications. Mara, still hidden within the ship's maintenance conduits, allowed herself a small smile. Amateur hour is over, boys, she whispered. The climax came when she accessed the ship's primary quantum computing core, a system so advanced it was supposed to be unhackable. To the Zorn, it was the pinnacle of technological achievement. To Mara, it was just another machine with too many moving parts and not enough common sense. She didn't break the system. She reprogrammed it to be monumentally inefficient. Imagine a supercomputer suddenly deciding that the most logical way to calculate faster than light trajectories was to first sort every potential calculation by the color of its hypothetical hat, then by the imaginary weight of its theoretical shoes. That was the level of bureaucratic inefficiency Mara introduced. The quantum core started generating reports. Endless, meticulously detailed reports about potential navigation scenarios that would never happen. Reports about reports. Meta-analyses of potential computational paths. The system became so busy explaining its own thought process that it stopped actually doing anything useful. How's that for artificial intelligence? Mara murmured. On the bridge, Admiral Krelax watched in growing horror as his flagship, a technological marvel that had conquered thousands of civilizations, began to essentially tie itself into computational knots. This is impossible, he said. Green, who had been running diagnostic after diagnostic, looked up with a mixture of terror and professional resignation. Apparently, she replied, someone didn't inform whatever is doing this that it's impossible. And that, fundamentally, was humanity's greatest strength. The ability to look at impossible and treat it like a mild inconvenience. The Zorn flagship didn't explode. It didn't dramatically tear itself apart. Instead, it simply stopped. Like a massive, technologically advanced computer that had decided computing was too much work and was taking an extended coffee break. Mara Rodriguez had just defeated the most technologically advanced invasion force in galactic history using nothing more than her wits, a modified infiltration kit, and an absolutely legendary level of professional spite. Just another Tuesday. The official report read like a masterpiece of bureaucratic understatement, technological intervention resulting in alien invasion neutralization. Mara Rodriguez read it while drinking coffee from a mug that proudly proclaimed "I void warranties" and looked distinctly unimpressed. Jack Martinez, her supervisor at Interplanetary Logistics and Repair, was less composed. You said, just save the entire planet with what amounts to advanced technological trolling. I prefer the term systemic optimization through creative problem-solving, Mara replied, not looking up from the report. The galactic communication networks which the Zorn had previously dominated were now abuzz with an unprecedented event. A pre-interstellar civilization had not just defended itself, but had comprehensively dismantled the most feared military force in known space. Admiral Krelax's official statement was a masterclass in diplomatic humiliation. The human intervention represents an unexpected approach to conflict resolution, which was basically alien speak for "we have no idea what just happened." The Zorn Hegemony, an organization that had conquered 2,743 civilizations, was now reconsidering its expansion strategies. Apparently, humanity had introduced a variable into their conquest algorithms that their most advanced quantum computers couldn't process pure, unadulterated human ingenuity. They sent warriors, Colonel Hammond told a closed congressional hearing. We sent a mechanic with an attitude problem and an impressive toolkit. Mara's modifications to the infiltration kit were now being studied by every major military and scientific institution on the planet. The technologies she had improvised, quantum frequency modulators jury-rigged from spare communication array components, adaptive infiltration algorithms created using what appeared to be a modified coffee machine circuit board, were revolutionizing human technological understanding. A wrench, the very same one she'd brought on the mission, was now displayed in a military museum. The placard read, "Instrument of First Contact Diplomatic Resolution Unit." Mara thought that was pretentious. Jack thought it was hilarious. The long-term implications were profound. The Zorn hegemony, previously seen as an unstoppable force, was now viewed as just another technological challenge. Other potential alien civilizations were receiving a very clear message: humanity might look disorganized, might seem technologically primitive, but they were definitely not to be underestimated. So Jack asked her a few weeks after the incident, "What are you going to do now?" Mara looked around her workshop, where 3 partially disassembled spacecraft waited for her attention. "Finish these repairs," she said. "Maybe grab some coffee. Possibly save the world again if it interrupts my lunch break." Just another Tuesday.